Hello, everyone. My name is Stepan. I'm from DeepSkills, founder and contributor to DeepSkills. And today, I want to talk about scaling onboarding for DAOs. I want to cover a few things. First, give a bit of introduction why this is an important topic, why we want to implement good onboarding experience in decentralized organizations, and then give a few very practical hints and use cases, and just share experience of how we've been doing it or how different organizations were approaching this problem. Yeah, so let's start. Why DAOs and why onboarding is such an important topic? First, to give a bit of overview, we are entering this, or we already entered this phase of re-decentralization of economy that is manifesting itself in very different forms. For example, we are seeing democratization of data because everything that can be digitized is being digitized. All data from closed siloed platforms is going into open protocols. Self-sovereign identity gives users control over their data, and then composability of data opens up much more potential ways to interact with it. We're also seeing democratization of money through crypto, $3 trillion economy of open, programmable, permissionless money, now creating your own monetary policies as accessible as it was never before. And we're also seeing democratization of work, which is very important when we're thinking about why people want to join DAOs and how many people will actually join DAOs in the next few years. So there's a few factors in play. First, we had pandemic, we had everybody switching to remote work, and that shifted mindset quite significantly. So now people are used to this way of working from home, from wherever they like to live and to work. And we're also seeing the merge between these two different ways of working. First is freelance economy or gig economy or creator economy, where people choose when to work, what projects to work on, with whom to work, and they completely control their working experience. And on the other hand, we have full-time position and security that comes with it. And somewhere in between these three factors is what we call future of work. And that's probably DAOs are best positioned in organizational form to actually help and empower people to find this middle ground in terms of how they work. And lastly, we're seeing democratization of coordination, which is obviously internet-native organizations, or DAOs are amazing form of contributor-centered, mission-driven organizations that are programmable and open source, and they help people to coordinate around shared goals, and they're inventing new coordination mechanisms. However, we're still super early, and there's a lot of problems that comes with it. So Peter was talking about some of those. I want to focus on specifically contributor experience and how do you scale your organization when more people want to join. Some of these problems are that DAOs are inefficient. We have a lot of communication channels, 1,000 messages on Discord per day. It's impossible to keep up, especially if you just joined the server and you have no idea how it works. The work itself is very unstructured. DAOs are less efficient than centralized, very hierarchical organizations, and that's fine. We are still at this period in time, and we will solve it. But right now, this is really the fact. And lastly, and probably most importantly, is that it is very hard for DAOs to onboard and retain talent. DAOs are organizations where any person can join and leave at any point in time. So there's no barrier to entry or exit, really. And that means that hiring and onboarding and then offboarding should be done much more decentralized and efficient way. We cannot, like IT corporations spend $20,000, $30,000 to hire one person. For DAOs, if you have thousands of people in your organization, that wouldn't be feasible. So I will share a few practical examples of how to approach and solve these issues. And by the way, A lot of these learnings are coming from amazing partners and organizations that we worked or did some research with over the last few years. And yeah, I think some of them are here present. So thank you. So first, I want to focus on this topic of onboarding documentation. This sounds pretty easy and simple. However, you'll be surprised how not a lot of organizations, not a lot of DAOs are actually doing this and doing this in a good way. So you want to have very clear documentation for people who are joining your organization that outlines what are the roles and type of work that is being done already within the organization. Just reading that material instead of setting up one-on-one call or waiting to trying to understand what is going on by reading Discord messages for months simplifies this a lot. So you start with defining clearly roles. So let's say, for example, you have content creation part of your DAO, and that means that there should be a role of content creator. Once you have the role defined, you say, like, what are the responsibilities, what are the prerequisites for this role, and then you go into defining capabilities, which is almost like an instruction, very detailed set of tasks and skills that are required to perform at that role. So for content creator, that would be something like doing research, creating a draft of an article, then showing it to some people, collecting feedback, publishing the final version, and then promoting it on social media, or something like this. It can be, it depends on the organization, on the role. But the more detailed, the more precise you have this description, the better. Because when new person joins an organization, or even when they're thinking about joining, they can just read this documentation. We just use Gitbook for that. And that gives them very good idea of what is the nature of work, and it actually helps them to even upskill themselves, and just by reading documentation, become better at this particular type of work. Just another example from our documentation. So we have this task. When you work with customer, you need to send them proposal, and then that task has very detailed description of, like, how often should you follow up, what should be follow-up messages, and so on. And that is not something static. That will be improved ideally every project you complete. You learn something from it, your roles and your, or for every role, these algorithm, these capabilities are improving, and if you reflect them in a timely manner, that will actually grow with the organization. And let's create this way to open source knowledge sharing within the organization. So you can decentralize knowledge exchange between any number of people that work in a DAO. Next thing I want to share is project management or decentralized project management approach. I will be sharing some screenshots from the application that we built, but it's not really to shill it. This system can be implemented using any of the existing no-code tools, like, for example, Discord and Notion and Google Doc and whatever your favorite project management tool can be. But the overall idea is that if you set up every sub-DAO or every piece of work within the organization as a project, and then you split it into roles that need to be there to complete the project, you can set up the system of upskilling and again, facilitating this knowledge transfer between people who are already in the DAO and people who are just joining, new contributors who are just being onboarded. And how it works, the main distinction here is that when new person is joining the org, they are not just applying to work on a project, they are applying to work on, to fulfill specific role and work with an existing expert, somebody who's been in a DAO for a while, so that this knowledge transfer can happen in peer-to-peer manner, and you can have even thousands of these projects running simultaneously, and you don't depend on one like core member or founder who needs to have calls with every new member who's joining and basically spend all their time on one-on-one calls with new contributors. So once a new contributor onboards, they can select tasks within the project, what they want to do. And it can be something very simple, just I want to shadow and see how it's being done, or I want to complete some actual tasks, and then depending on how much they commit to this project, their compensation would also differ. After the project is completed, both expert and the new contributor give review to each other, which is also important because this way you are starting building up reputation and verifiable representation of skills and capabilities of all DAO contributors. And once you have it, once you have those credentials, you can then enable decentralized team formation because people can look at each other's skills and capabilities and form sub-DAOs or pods or project teams depending on what skills are required at this point in time. Yeah. And then the last part I want to talk about is decentralized reputation. So this is still quite early, although I think this is very hot and very important infrastructural piece for DAOs. And I'm sure it will be a norm, and it will be very widely used once these systems are developed. The need for decentralized reputation is really, with decentralized reputation, we really just want to reduce the cost of establishing trust between people and organizations. In Web 2 world, this is done through HR practices. You have some kind of self-reported data, something like resume or LinkedIn profile. You give it to recruiters, and they then need to verify this information because they cannot really trust it blindly. You can write anything you want on your CV. And that process is quite expensive. As I said, it costs about $30,000 to hire an engineer at Facebook, for example. In decentralized world and Web3, we have amazing tools that can improve this process very, very significantly. And the core of this is digital identity. Digital identity is just some form of representation, of digital presentation, maybe just your MetaMask account, your Ethereum address, and a data store that is associated with it. So we're using Ceramic Network, for example. It can be any kind of decentralized storage system. But the the important piece here is that in that data store linked to your digital identity, you have a bunch of attestation that are collected from third parties. So instead of having self-reported CV where you write about yourself, you have this long or rich profile of data that was issued about you by DAOs that you worked with, educational organizations, other people just giving you kudos, or maybe some non-human computational agents, aka blockchains, that show your transaction history or smart contracts you interacted or deployed, or any objective data that can be validated and that does not come from yourself, that somebody else is telling about you. And once we have this system, and by the way, this system should, as we've been kind of exploring and researching this topic, we identified 5 very important principles of how decentralized identity should be built. First one should be verifiable, so every data point should have some kind of digital signature so that you can verify this data independently. And second, it should be portable. It shouldn't be locked into LinkedIn or any centralized service. You should be, as a user, you should be able to take it with you and bring it to any application. So I can go to look for a new job at DAO, or I can maybe look for investor or look for mentor or network, and I can bring the same digital identity with me and share the same information with different applications. It should be privacy preserving. We don't want to forcefully dox people. We want to give them control over what they want to share and with whom. The system should be decentralized, meaning that it's just not owned by any single entity. And lastly, and probably most importantly, it should be composable, because already right now we see last week I had compilation. There's about 40 different decentralized reputation protocols in Web3, and that is great because all of them have some kind of specialization. Git-POAP, for example, they focus very deeply on validating skills and reputation for engineers. And Coordinape does it for small groups, project groups, and SourceCred has their own methodology. And then some of them are focusing on on-chain data, some of them are focusing on peer-to-peer interaction and soft skills. So that's great. By doing this, by combining all of that, we can build really rich profiles that automate assessment, and then onboarding becomes much easier through this objective data that you can use. And this is just an example of how we approach decentralized reputation and deep skills. What we did was just building connectors to a lot of the systems like SourceCred, Coordinape, Colony, Git-POAP, and then also some of the Web2 platforms like Discord and Twitter and GitHub, and then pulling all of that data in your decentralized identity profile that you can then reuse and share. For example, when you apply to work with a new DAO, you can share this profile, and if we enable sharing of capabilities and skills and achievements across multiple organizations, that would allow, on the one hand, it will allow users to build this verifiable portfolio, and for organizations, it will reduce the cost of understanding like who is that person, where they can be helpful, and that matchmaking process becomes much cheaper. And just lastly, I want to share an example how it looks like. The only thing I want to highlight here is that as we were building this, one thing we realized it is quite valuable to split your identity, your professional identity, into 4 categories, which is skills, something that you know how to do, which can be content creation or programming or people management, organizations that you are affiliated with, because that gives some cultural background. If I worked for 3 years at Gitcoin, that can say something about me. Projects, because those can happen outside of organizations, especially some kind of maybe organizing a conference or contributing to open source. And then people, because we are all social animals, and then social connections are super important for us to kind of have very to assess other people and have a summary of what they do. That is it. Thanks a lot for your attention. Yeah, it's not visible, but you can go to deepskills.io. We have a bit more materials over there, some examples that we did for other organizations with documentation specifically. Yeah, thanks.